I know you're wondering, how did I get myself in this situation? Well, here's my story. The air was thick with smoke and a stench of burning wood and flesh. Corporal James Carter stumbled through the dense forest, his heartbeat a drum in his ears. He had been separated from his platoon during a retreat, and the chaotic echoes of gunfire and shouted orders pulling him deeper into the woods. His radio was dead, his rifle only half loaded, and the enemy was everywhere. But as the hours wore on and silence cloaked the forest, James realized something more insidious was stalking him. By nightfall, James found an abandoned farmhouse. His roof sagged and his windows were hollow eyes gazing into the endless dark. He crept inside, pushing through the door as quietly as he could manage, and set down his rifle. A single oil lamp sat on the table, its wick long dry, but James had matches. Lighting the lamp, he inspected the room. A table, 2 chairs, a broken cabinet, and a cot dusted with mildew. It was a heaven compared to the open forest. He spent the night there, hunted by fragmented memories of his comrades. Williams, the bodacious one, shouting for cover. Lieutenant Hargreaves, hand on his shoulders, pulling him to safety. The flash of an enemy grenade, and then silence. He must have hit his head during the retreat because his recollection of how he ended up alone was a blur. The following morning, James stepped outside and froze. There, about 20 yards from the farmhouse, stood a figure. It was him. Not a man who looked like him, not a vague resemblance. It was him. The doppelganger was dressed in the same torn uniform, his face smudged with identical streaks of dirt and blood. He even held a rifle in the exact same manner James did, slightly loose in the left hand due to a sprained wrist from weeks earlier. For a moment, James thought he was looking into a mirror until the double tilted his head in a way James had never done, his mouth curling into a faint, mocking smile. "Who are you?" James demanded, gripping his rifle tightly. The double said nothing. It took one step forward, then another. "Stay back!" James shouted, raising a gun. His finger hovered over the trigger. The figure stopped, its expression unchanging. Then it turned and walked into the forest, vanishing into the shadows. James spent the rest of the day trying to convince himself he'd imagined it. The strain of war, hunger, and exhaustion could do strange things to a man. But as dusk fell, he caught movement in the trees again. The double returned, standing slightly at the edge of the clearing, watching. Every attempt James made to confront it ended the same. The figure would wait until James got close, then disappear deeper into the woods. By the third night, James could hardly sleep. He sat on the floor of the farmhouse with his back on the wall, rifle in his lap, the oil lamp burning low. His doppelganger hadn't appeared that evening, but James could feel his presence, a gnawing unease that made his skin crawl. When sleep finally claimed him, it brought no comfort. He dreamed of the double standing over him, his cold, glassy eyes staring into his soul. It whispered things he couldn't understand, its lips moving soundlessly, but the meaning was clear. It wanted to replace him. The next morning, James awoke to find his rifle missing. He searched the farmhouse frantically, but it was gone. Outside, he found fresh boot prints leading into the woods. With no weapons, James followed the tracks. His fear had turned to anger. He would find this thing, whatever it was, and end this nightmare. The tracks led him to a clearing by a small stream. There, standing in the water, was the doppelganger. This time, it wasn't wearing a uniform. It was naked, its pale skin marred with bruises and scars that mimicked James' own. It turned to him slowly, and for the first time, it spoke. "You don't belong here. I do." James staggered back, his breath hitching. "What do you mean? You're lost, a fragment, a shadow. I am the whole." The doppelganger took a step forward, his voice low and steady. "You're just a memory trying to survive." James shook his head. "No, you're lying. I'm real." The double smiled. "Are you? Are you real?" James' mind raced. He tried to think of the last moment he was certain of his own existence, of his own choices. Had he died in a retreat? Had his force trapped him in some kind of purgatory he didn't know? The doppelganger lunged. James barely had time to react. Scrambling backward and grabbing a sharp rock from the stream bed, the two struggled, water splashing around them. James managed to drive the rock into the doppelganger's chest. It let out a terrible, inhuman scream, his form flickering like a broken film reel. For a moment, James saw himself reflected in his eyes, tired, wounded, and afraid. The doppelganger collapsed into the water, his body dissolving into a black mist that seeped into the earth. James wandered the forest for days after that, unsure if he had truly won or if the thing was still out there watching. When he was finally found by a French resistance group, they told him no platoon had passed through the area in weeks. He was the only soldier they'd seen alive. He returned to his unit weeks later, but something in him had changed. The others noticed his quietness, his hesitation, the way he avoided looking at his own reflection for too long. James had survived the war, but he would never escape the feeling that part of him had been left behind in that forest, or worse, that something else had taken his place. That night haunts him. And yes, it haunts him for the rest of his day.